Hello, everyone. Welcome back to GovConHacks. Happy Thursday. I'm Ashley Duwel, Government Sales Strategist, and your host.
And I'm Natasha Velez. You're
Weirdo. And tonight we have a very special guest. I'd like to introduce Shauna Weatherly, a respected contract acquisition expert and former federal contracting officer, here to talk about something we don't hear nearly enough about these days: what's not changing in government contracting. So thank you so much, Shauna, for joining us.
Oh, you're
Yay.
welcome. Happy to be here.
So, in a space where everyone's talking about new rules, tech, and of course, shifting priorities, it is quite easy to think the entire landscape is in constant flux. At least I feel that way. I literally will ask myself, what is not changing? Really? I feel like everything's changing. But there are some enduring truths. So, that contractors do need to know about and understand. So, if you master these, you'll have a steadier foundation to matter what's happening in the headlines.
Exactly. And tonight, Shauna is going to walk us through some of the constants that still shape how agencies buy, how contractors succeed, and why some fundamentals will never really go away. So, even as everything else is changing, but before we dive in, Shauna, I'd love if you would introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about your background.
Well, thanks for having me, Ashley and Natasha. It's great to be here. Yeah, my name's Shauna Weatherly. I am the president and founder of Federal Subcontract Solutions, FedSubK for short. And I came into this role in the GovCon space from a 35-year federal career with both the military and civilian agencies, Corps of Engineers, Department of Army, FAA, and GSA. And most of that time was spent as a acquisition workforce member, either as a contract specialist, a contracting officer, chief of contracting, and a FAR policy subject matter expert with a little bit of project management thrown in there and some budget and HR in the front end. So that's kind of my 35-year career in a nutshell. And right now, what I'm doing is trying to take all that knowledge from those 35 years and push it forward to help small businesses and mid-sized businesses understand what federal contracting is all about, and hopefully dispel some of the myths and misconceptions about it, and help folks find easier paths through the process.
Well, thank you so much for what you do. I have to say, I have a front row seat to Shauna's LinkedIn page. So if you do not, I highly recommend clicking follow. I get so many insightful, just she brings a different spin in a way that I had maybe not thought about. So if you're not following her, her content is not AI generated. You're missing out.
Nope.
So, Shauna, you've said before that no matter what changes, agencies are always buying to fulfill their mission. Can you kind of unpack that for us? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, mission-driven buying kind of comes down to really just looking at what do agencies need to fulfill their specific mission, and they all have different missions that are very, specific and different focuses. Obviously, we have VA with veterans, we have Department of Defense with defense, we have DHS, Homeland Security. The names tell you what their mission is in a lot of ways. So making sure that those agencies are buying what they need to fulfill those missions. Sometimes it overlaps a little bit. That's why we see some government-wide contracts. But what they need is what really shapes their procurements. It's who they're going to buy, how they're buying, and what they're buying. So that's really what, in a nutshell, mission-driven buying is. And that is not going to change no matter what we're talking about. Maybe who buys it could change, but not really the overall mission specific purchasing. It won't change much.
I like that. So, from the contractor side, what would you say is the best way for a business to make sure that their proposal clearly aligns with the mission and the
Well,
agency's mission in general?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot that can be done. One of the first things I always tell people is everybody's being told to, write capability statements. Well, if you're throwing the same generic capability statement across every agency, you're not showing them that you understand their mission. You're not
Yes.
showing them the best of what you can do for their mission. So focusing on an agency's mission is really important as a clear way, just as part of your marketing and your proposal writing, to make sure that an agency understands that you're in it with them. You understand them because that's who they want to work with, people that get it for their agency, right? So I think it's really important to make sure you're putting those things forward when you're talking about it and you're making an effort to really understand like their strategic plans and all those things that agencies write. Agencies write strategic plans for 5-year plans, 10-year plans, and they buy based on those plans. Those plans are posted out
Wow.
on the internet. You can just Google DHS strategic plan and you'll find it. So understanding that and weaving that into your discussions with agencies that you're targeting to market and submitting proposals with is really important.
I actually see a lot of that. I will get asked, will you create me a capability statement? And of course I will. But who are we speaking to? What difference? So all of our capability statements, of course, are going to be editable, and we have to have a tailoring conversation with the client, right? So my question is, what difference from your experience is it going to make when they do take the time to align their offer with that core agency purpose?
Well, it gives you a level of credibility with the agency that you've actually taken the time to understand them and know what they're doing. They don't have to take that added step of explaining to you what they're
Yeah.
doing. A lot of companies come in and say, "Well, tell me what it is you guys are doing today." No, I loved it when a company would come in and say, "Well, I see on the strategic plan for FAA that you guys are working on modernizing, the airspace, or you're working on modernizing, radar system," right? I mean, that took the conversation to a completely different level. So I think that that's the difference is it shows that you've done the time to take the homework and you can start on a further foot into the relationship and the conversations. It's not a starting point where, we're just telling you what we do and hoping that, maybe there's a match.
Right. Like, hey, we're a small woman-owned business and we do this kind of
Not
consulting.
like with your sim slides, please.
Yeah.
Well, I think we pretty much narrowed down that the constant is relationship. So you want to research, you want to know about the agency. That's going to help you build a relationship because they feel like you're invested in their mission, right? So if
Right.
it's built ethically, of course, right? But why do they still matter so much? Like in the time of
Yeah.
AI, and everyone's just emailing and everyone's just like sending capability statements. I don't have to call. I don't have to go see them and network, do I? Why does that still matter?
Well, it's because there's only so many hours in the days to read emails, quite frankly, right? From a contracting officer, or read
Oh,
chats or whatever it is that's coming through. You have a much better chance if you're calling and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. Can I bring you a cup of coffee? What do you like? Do you have 15 minutes?" Then and getting some information and getting to know somebody and what they're doing then cold sending a capability statement and expecting the contracting officer to take 15, 20 minutes out of their time to read it, write you
mhm.
back a meaningful response and get that back. It
Well,
it allows you to build some back and forth that actually lends you credibility when you get to the evaluation portion of actually submitting a proposal. They'll be like, "Oh, I know that guy. I've talked to him 2 or 3 times." There's an implied, like I said, credibility that comes from that because they've already met you, they've already talked to you, they like you, they've formed an opinion, and you want that that relationship to be something that is based on work, but also, you want to get to know a person and build the trust both ways. I think businesses also need to build the trust with the agencies that they're going to get work also, so they don't feel like they're getting a bad end of the stick either, on this. So I think it works both ways.
Absolutely. I agree with that because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of money we're dealing with.
It
And
is.
if you're not trusting and you don't jive well with the people you're working with, well, things that could result. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but sometimes people think that relationship based means aggressive networking.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
but you've kind of stressed not being overly salesy. What does effective but ethical relationship building look like?
Well, let's talk about ethical first. It's understanding that contracting officers or requirements, people that are writing requirements can only tell you so much at certain times in the conversation, right? So it's not pressing for those pieces of information, not offering things for pieces of information or promises, or even not overtly doing that, but just saying, hey, we're taking our group out to see the Cubs this weekend. We can get you a ticket if you want to go along. That's not ethical. Don't even, go down that road with people, because they're going to tell you no. And some people who are new may not know well enough to say no, and it will get them in trouble. And you don't want to do that. That's not how you want to start a relationship off with an agency. But effective is really talking about what the agency's mission pain points are, and then listening. It's a lot of listening. It's not the selling and the talking that the agency wants to get from a company, but the listening, and then the offering of solutions or understanding of pain points, even if they don't have a solution, as to how there might be end roads to get there. And you can do that by asking questions. You can do it by setting up a conversation. You can do it by coming to an industry day or going to a conference and catching those people. But listening, I think, is what people need to do a lot more of for the government.
I love that. I say that all the time. I'm like, you get these little gems, these little things that make you stand out. And there's a person at the other end of that proposal. So I'm going to lead into, I know that you were a contracting officer.
Yeah.
My question to you is, in building that relationship with you prior, right? That capture is what we call it. And having that credibility, does it make a real difference? And if it does, during the evaluation process, what does that look like?
Well, I can give you an example of one where it was a very simple thing. We had an 8A, and this, we can go sole source with 8A, or we can go competitive. And I had this 8A that would come visit me all the time, about every quarter. They would fly up from Southern California to Northern California, and they would do the rounds at the different agencies. And I didn't have anything I could give this 8A. They were new, they were looking for their first opportunity, and they were sitting in the office, and we were talking about, they were an environmental consulting firm. And it's like, we just don't have anything yet. We're putting it all on our IDIQs, all this stuff. And he just happened to be in the office at the right place at the right time. And my cost estimator came in, and he was all disheveled, and he handed me a bunch of estimates and says, I'm just going to sit these on your desk. I'm sorry. I've lost some people. And I don't have time to do estimating. And I introduced him to, the person in the office. I said, oh, this is so-and-so, my cost estimator for our environmental work. And he said, didn't skip a beat. This contractor said, oh, you're short people. We can do cost estimating. We know how to do that. And I sat there and I thought, this is a good company. They've been here. They've told me what they can do. They've told me what they've talked about. This could make, a huge impact to both them with a first contract and us with some help. And sure enough, we got those two married up, and they got a sole source $3 million contract because they could do that work. And it wasn't the work they wanted to do right off the bat, right? They wanted to be out doing environmental remediation, but they did cost estimating, and we burned through that first 3 million in about 18 months. And then they went on to do another short duration contract sole source. And then they started being able to get the environmental remediation contracts they wanted. And that built that credibility over time. So even just offering maybe, support where maybe you didn't intend to, but can get you in there, it makes a real difference. I wouldn't have had that same feeling of credibility of saying, hey, let's think about giving this 8A this contract if I had just gotten a capability statement from them, on email. That would not have happened.
That makes sense. That's actually a very interesting story, and proves true to something I learned in business development class that I took. A, active listening, but B, the most simplest thing that I heard you say through that whole thing, for our audience's sake, was he was in the room. He was in the room at the right time with the right people.
Yeah,
So
he wasn't behind his computer.
Right. He wasn't sitting behind his computer. So think about that next time you say, oh, I don't want to go to the 8A conference, or, oh, soft week will, I'll catch it next year. Think about that. You have to be in the room that your buyers are in, but I digress.
It has to start somewhere.
You do. Everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Shauna, talk about the rules that aren't going away. So you mentioned in your email the FAR, the Competition and Contracting Act, and the Small Business Act.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're hearing all about the FAR right now, right? And while it's going through an overhaul, it's still going to exist. So just knowing that FAR is still going to be in place, it's not going away. It's going to be a pared down version, but not completely gone, is something to just recognize that. And actually, for the sake of businesses, it's probably going to be easier to understand than it's ever been for you to, read the FAR, look at the FAR, because it's not going to have all these contracting officers must, contracting officers shall, contracting officers may, business in there that points you from place to place, right? It's going to be pared down, and it's going to be a little more straight to the point. So that I think is really important. Just FAR is not going away. There's still a set of rules that government buying is going to abide by, and the FAR is the granddaddy of them all, right? And then every agency will have their supplement under that will eventually also go through its own mini overhaul to adjust to what the changes are that we see in FAR. The Competition and Contracting Act, that's the act that requires, the maximum competition, public notification of competition, and sets out the exceptions for competition in FAR Part 6. FAR Part 6 came out not long ago. I went through and have looked at that. There's no changes in that. We still see, GAO, bid protest authority, there, all those things. So those things are not going to change. The government is still going to have to justify any exceptions to full and open competition and do those under those statutory exceptions. So that won't go anywhere. And then the Small Business Act is the act that requires that we, set aside, a certain amount of contracts for small business opportunities and maximize those opportunities where we can. Now, how we see that play out in terms of set asides and things could change. I don't know if we're going to see any changes in the socioeconomic arena. FAR Part 19 is still yet to be overhauled, but the Small Business Act remains in play. It's not going to go away without congressional changes. And so, FAR is now being pared down to statutory requirements, all these things we just talked about. And those statutory requirements will not change unless there is congressional action. So for now, they stay intact.
Wow. Well, for contractors, specifically for small ones, how does that, like these anchor points and these FAR requirements that are being changed, how does it help make them have better bid decisions?
Well, I think there are points that you can rely on, right? So there's points in play that you can rely on, like certain things in terms of competition. There's still going to be exceptions to the rule, and if you're one of those companies that falls within an exception, there's still room for you there. It's figuring out now how to, wrap your story and your value around these points, because we are seeing this shift to value driven. Right. So it's no more just what you do, it's more the value that you bring. So there may be a shifting of the way you think about them, but not necessarily the points that, like you said, anchor bid decisions and things like that. I think that's the main point.
Okay.
And even when policy shifts happen, these statutory requirements like the Small Business Act, they keep the ground from moving too far under our feet, right? Or I know the 8A program is going through an audit right now, but you kind of explain that sort of relationship or correlation.
Yeah, I mean, this is how government contracting won't shift too terribly. We're not going to see like the small business socioeconomic certifications thrown out like a baby with the bathwater, right? It's not going to happen like that. There may be some shifting of focus. There may be some shifting of, like we've seen set asides on GSA schedules now become not set aside, there can be some shifting going on, but you're just not going to see it disappear. It's not going to fall out from under your feet. If you have a firm offering and you have a value proposition that you can bring, and you can use that to grow and market and grow, and use the relationships like we've talked about, and focus on the mission driven buying, you still have play in this game. There's ways to play.
I agree. And even if
Well,
they were to go away completely, I mean, we still got small business, right?
yeah,
We could hope. But
Yeah.
as we talk about shifting, let us shift back to the basics. Now, contract types, pricing, compliance, terms, and performance standards. These sound simple, but they can trip people up.
yes, they trip people up a lot. And it can be as simple as not reading a solicitation and not following instructions, right? Those types of basics all still matter. Having the focus and the discipline to understand, what you have to do to get a contract, and that's understanding what the different contract types are. We're not going to see
Right.
firm fixed price contracts go away. We're not going to see cost contracts go away. We're still going to see time and material contracts, and understanding what those are. We may see more hybrids of those used, maybe a mix, which we've started seeing over the past several, like the last decade. You can see a hybrid that starts as cost and goes to fixed or whatever. But that's not going to change. Pricing is still always going to be important. If the government does nothing else, it's always going to evaluate price. So that's one of the basics and fundamentals that you're going to need to understand and hone in on and strategize with as you're working to put together your proposals and look at your go no go decisions and things like that. It's always very important to do that, and understanding what that means, and knowing what your competition is doing. I'm shocked at the number of people that don't understand that Acquisition Gateway for GSA has a pricing tool out there that you can look at and see what the average price on schedule is, from the lowest to the highest, and it gives you the mean, medium, mode type thing. And they don't understand that when they're pulling together GSA pricing, let's say, for example, they can go out there and look at that and see, am I competitive or not? Am I on the low end? Am I on the high end? And be strategic about it. Again, another thing is compliance. If you're not thinking about compliance before you're going after a contract, you're behind. I can't tell you how many companies have won contracts and then come to me and said, tell me what I have to do to be compliant. That's a huge misstep. You can get yourself into a lot of hot water by not knowing what you need to be compliant with after you win a contract. So those are basics that still matter, still very important, understanding the terms and conditions, and then, following performance, making sure you can follow up what you said in your proposal with action and do it well. And even if you have trips and skips and, which happen during contract performance, the best contractors have, struggle with performance at times. The communication goes back to the relationship, right? If you've had that good relationship going in, the government's going to be helpful about wanting to make it right, get everybody back on the right lane and moving forward again. People are people, and we always try to help each other. And that's just, kind of human nature, wanting to help somebody out. And that will happen, even under the worst performance standards. So those all those basics are still so important. So important.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I've seen companies as recently as this week focused on so much on strategy and on proposal, right? They want that win, that they completely just overlook the performance standards, things like the contract termination clauses, which is a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
What's your advice for balancing pursuit with preparedness to perform?
Well, I mean, you have to have money coming in the door. We understand that, right? So that, you have to keep a pipeline going, but you can't give up compliance for building the pipeline completely, in my mind. And if you get behind on performance, you will kill your pipeline. I tell people all the time, if you get a bad rating, if you work with an agency and you trip up and you can't fix it and perform and pull it out of the fire, it's going to be difficult to recover. It will be difficult to recover. So you will kill a pipeline if you can't perform. That's kind of the bottom line.
Do you find that businesses underestimate how important that is in regards to CPARs?
Yeah, I think they do. And I think, today even it's kind of interesting. We saw an article come out today in Federal News Network about the House and Senate are looking at changing the CPARs for DoD to strictly a negative based
Oh, I saw
system,
that.
if you can believe that.
I did see that.
And yeah. And so, I mean, that's
Yeah.
really going to be a killer
Send you
because
the
there's
article.
not going to be there's not going to be any way to add the great stuff that you do. If you do something negative, it's going to be in there if it's a material issue that impacts the government. But and if you can pull it out of the fire, then they can put something good in there about, oh, well, this was bad, but then they did this to make it right. But it's going to be a
Mhm.
negative based system is what the proposal is from the House and Senate. So we'll see if that goes forward, but that's not going to help you, if you don't have your performance and your A game going in there. It is really a long-term success. Those things follow you for several years, depending on what type of contract you've got. It could be as long as 8 years for architect engineer contracts, just based on the timing of how those ratings hit and how long they stay in the system from the end of a contract award date.
Wow.
Yeah.
That will be interesting. I have not looked at my RSS feed at all today yet, so
Yeah. Made a
I'm
lot of us
learning
go.
that right along with you all. I'm disappointed, to say the least.
Yeah, I've had to talk a few people off a ledge today over that one. So
Oh, I bet. I can
I
imagine.
had to overlook it. I was like, wait, what?
I'm
Why?
over here thinking about all of my clients who, I mean, they have stellar CPAR ratings
yeah,
and they
all
they
going to be
do them
like
very
this.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
hmm
Anyway,
Yeah.
so staying current while respecting the constants, even though these fundamentals aren't really changing. You said it's, of course, essential to stay current on these policy shifts. Now, we did mention Federal News Network as being one source, but how do you
Mhm.
recommend contractors balance learning what's new without losing sight of what's always true?
Well, I think one way that you can get the info from the horse's mouth, so to speak, is you can sign up at the Federal Register for notification when proposed rules and things like that come out. The big ticket stuff, like if SBA is changing something like size standards, or DOL is changing something. If individual agencies are changing something underneath, you can target searches out there, and they will send you, links to, or a synopsis. I usually get a list every day that has, all the different links for the different titles of what's changing. That's one good way, but we're not really in rulemaking right now. We're seeing a lot of this stuff just kind of come through FAR and executive orders, right? So there is a collection location for executive orders at whitehouse.gov. So you can, I always go out there and take a look. If I hear a new executive orders come out, I don't always worry about what it is, but I go out there and check every once in a while, and you can read those there. And then you can subscribe and follow trusted resources in the GovCon space. Several people like myself, we have websites, we have newsletters, we have very active feeds. I think some people think I post too much most of the time, but it's trying to get the information out there that I think is important, and monitoring changes through the FAR overhaul site on acquisition.gov is good too. There's trusted resources, like I said, Federal News Network, FedScoop, Gov Executive. There's several of those that I also follow as well. So
I do like
I
the
love
small
that.
GoFundMe blog too. They're
yeah,
pretty good, but I have to
Mhm.
say that the FAR overhaul has had a permanent tab on my computer for the better part of the
Ooh,
last couple weeks.
I'm gonna have to give that one a shot.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and you can look at what the new overhaul says, but I always go to the practitioner's guide and look at the line out, because I want to know more about what's out, because that tells me more about what hasn't changed, right? If I can just still read what's still left behind and know what was taken out, then I know what to worry about and what not to worry about anymore, which is really nice.
Yeah, that sounds like the path of least resistance for
Yeah,
sure.
the line out is very important, I think.
I love that. I would always just say, like, all right, so when we're talking about our overhaul of the FAR, but nothing's really changing in regards to business review, if we're doing our internal processes, like as small businesses, how do we review our internal process? How do we manage our training? And how do we make sure that they're current with the things not changing and even with the things that are changing?
Well, I always encourage companies to have like an internal management control type of checklist when it comes to their acquisition, efforts, or compliance checklist. I've
Mhm.
called it both things. But if you're going to do, acquisition in the federal space, it's good to have that, keep it up to date. I would say every quarter to 6 months, probably at the 6 months would be a good timeline. You can set a cadence so that you can check your FAR register or your SAM registration. You can check your SBS profile and see if you need to update that. You can check and see if anything has changed in terms of compliance. Have some clauses left, have some clauses come on. All those things. Keep a record of it, keep it focused, and don't deviate from it. If it's some of these things are just a cost of doing business,
Yeah.
unfortunately. I hate to say it. And you're going to hear, there's right now there's all sorts of people flashing, AI proposal writing tools at us and AI opportunity tools at us. And I'm not saying any of those are bad or good. I mean, I really have no opinion one way or the other. I think they all have value, but it's being very intentional about when you're going to chase one of those just shiny objects, as you call it, and making sure that you have rationale for doing it, that you really have a business
Mhm.
case, a business need, and you're going to get return on investment to do that. But
Like,
that's how I tell people to really, stay focused on that internal process, but, be very intentional with what you bring into it.
Absolutely. I could not agree with that
mhm.
more. I do want to let our audience know we're coming up on time. So if you have questions, now's the time to drop them in the chat.
Now or
Um,
never.
now or never. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah.
It has been a great reminder that sort of while these headlines will always keep announcing big changes, the backbone of government contracting will stay pretty steady. And there are resources that we have dropped in the chat. Check out federalregister.gov, whitehouse.gov in the chat, in the comments rather below. Those are great sources where you can get these real-time updates, as Shauna explained.
Yes. And if you're listening, the takeaway here is simple: master your constants, and you'll be ready to adapt when changes come your way.
That's right. And Shauna, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your insights. For our listeners, if any of you guys have any questions, we'll go ahead and answer them now. But if you are new here with us, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. You can do so right there. See that right there? That's how you can support us. It doesn't cost you a dime. So, do we have any questions? We
Uh,
have someone who says, G says, "Hey team, I've been submitting a lot of bids lately. Could you please give me some advice about what projects we should bid on?" I already know what Shauna's answer. Shauna, tell me. Go ahead.
Bid on the ones you know you can win.
That's a good one. I thought she was going to say it depends.
Well, it does depend, really. I mean, that's
I feel like
it's
that should be a quote. I almost want that as a shirt.
I think it should be a
It's going to be.
shirt.
Right?
It's
Like, just
going to be.
Yeah, we need to
Shauna's
That's what
make
our
it.
conference shirts are going to say.
Yeah, yeah.
that's it. We're gonna be Team Shauna.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it does depend on, it depends on what you're selling. It depends on what agencies you're targeting. It depends on your experience level.
Mhm.
And it depends on roles. Should you be a prime, or should you be looking at sub opportunities to start and get your foot in the door? Just throwing bids out to see what sticks, I don't recommend, because that's a costly proposition. I think it's really important to build a go no go strategy before you do that. Can become very costly, and I've seen businesses go out of business just in the proposal process of trying to
Yep.
throw proposals out. So they end up folding or pivoting.
And you do go through proposal exhaustion.
Yes.
So you will literally, because everything is a shiny new object. I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. You could do everything. And then before you know it, you just literally twitch every time you see solicitation.
You have a primary NAICS code for a reason. That's supposed to be where you're going to focus. So I would say always, pick a focus.
Yep.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot possibly bid on everything. And if it seems like it's written in such a way that it's impossible for any small business to meet the requirements, probably not the one for you.
Yeah.
Don't try to stick a square peg in a round hole, guys.
Yeah.
But thank you, G, for the comment. And I would love to hear how it's going for you. Come back and join us next week. And speaking of proposal exhaustion, I do have one announcement to make. We're wrapping up Q4 and these ladies are tired. So we are going to take a weekend away. So we will not be here in 2 weeks. We will catch you back the first week of September. So if there are no more questions, yes, we are out. I want to thank Shauna again for joining us. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It has been amazing having you on, and I hope that you'll come back.
Definitely. You guys are fun.
We try to make it fun. This is a very dry topic. And
Shauna, do you have a podcast?
No, I don't, but I have an idea for one.
You should.
We should have a conversation.
You do such a good job at talking. Yes. I know I have to talk, but I was too busy listening. I was like, everything she's saying.
I do. I follow Shauna on LinkedIn, and literally every post there's something that a light bulb goes off.
No, I do. I absolutely love her post, but this is the first time I've seen her speak, and I'm like, she's way better at talking.
The first time I think I've seen you live, Shauna, to be honest.
What was that?
I think it's the first time I've ever seen you live.
Yeah. Most of it's recorded, so yeah.
Well, thank you for being brave and coming on with us.
I figured if I could do it with anybody, it could be you guys. So
thank you for that. We are literally the only fools, I think, in the industry that come on here and go live and show our true selves. Everybody else is worried about their P's and Q's. So
that's awesome. I love it.
I appreciate you coming with us. And we'll have you back soon to our audience. We will see you then in a few weeks. We're going to try to post some unscheduled content for you to absorb while we are away. And we'll see you back. Have a great week and weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.